Hocus Pocus is a 1993 film starring Bette Midler, Sarah Jessica Parker, and Kathy Najimy. It became a cult classic for spooky movie lovers and a go-to film to watch during the Halloween season. The story is California native Max and his young sister Dani moving to Salem, Massachusetts. Max is skeptical of the witchy traditions of Salem and on a whim lights the black flame candle on Halloween night, summoning 3 witches named Winifred, Sarah, and Mary. Joined by Max's crush and classmate Allison and a boy from the witch's past, cursed to live as a cat, Thackeray Binks, we watch our main characters go up against the witch sisters to stop them from using the children of Salem to finalize their resurrection ritual and obtain eternal youth. It's a pretty serviceable story, but it really wouldn't be anywhere without the charisma of the 3 leading villains. We get lots of scenery chewing, wacky character moments, and a catchy musical number. The witches are ultimately defeated and Binks is allowed to move on to the afterlife, and our young trio live happily ever after. It isn't a perfect movie, of course, Dani being a fairly annoying character in particular, and there's some discomfort about constantly referring to Max, who is only 15 years old, as a virgin, considering it's treated as something worthy of mockery. I was 15 years old once as well, believe it or not, and while I did know of people my age and younger fooling around, I think it's inappropriate for a children's movie to treat virginity as shameful. Despite some of its faults, it's become so cemented in our culture that even with some of the controversy surrounding its biggest star, Bette Midler, is considered untouchable by many. However, Hocus Pocus serves as a nostalgic, enjoyable movie that can be pulled out during the Halloween season and has become a beloved classic. And then Disney had to go and make a sequel in 2022. Listen, this might be a controversial opinion, but I don't have a problem with nostalgic sequels and reboots. There's a few of them I actually really like, Beetlejuice being a Halloween movie that came out this year that I really enjoyed. It can be done well, but Hocus Pocus 2 is, well, there's some problems with it. While there is clear care and effort put into the sequel, such as with the acting, the showmanship, the stupendous costume design, practical effects, and SFX makeup, Hocus Pocus 2 was lacking especially in the writing department. I feel like Hocus Pocus 2 could have been refined more, and that is no more clear than who we decide to focus on as our protagonists. I feel like there's this misconception that for young people to identify with a series of characters, there needs to be a teenage or younger protagonist, when, especially for a movie like Hocus Pocus, that was never the case. The characters that the kids like the most, and who most people like, are in fact the witches. I don't think anybody really cared about Max or Dani or Allison in the first movie. I've certainly never heard anybody say that any of those 3 were their favorite characters. It's usually, which of the 3 witches do you like the most? Or you have the occasional person, say Billy Butcherson, who was a zombie, or Thackeray Binks tends to be a crowd favorite. So I feel like having your main character be Becca with the supporting secondary characters being Izzy and Cassie, I think that was a mistake. But it's not just because younger people prefer the villains of this movie. It's because the audience of this movie is not young people, at least not teenagers and children. The audience for Hocus Pocus 2 was millennials. This movie was originally released in 1993 and it reran on television, it was in video rental stores, it was watched over and over again by millennials, and it was being sort of advertised as a nostalgic sequel 30 years later. There's also the problem that the main character, Becca, and her friends don't really have a whole lot to do. I feel like we spend the majority of our time with them just watching the Sanderson sisters be the Sanderson sisters, or it's spent stuck in a hole in the ground, or doing something that feels really inconsequential to the story as a whole. In fact, the character that gets the most done is actually the character that I think should be the main character, and that's Gilbert. So Gilbert's story is that when he was very young, he had like an awful Halloween. People stole his candy. He was all by himself. But as he was wandering home with his empty trick-or-treat bag, he looked up and he saw 3 figures on broomsticks. And this was, of course, Mary, Sarah, and Winnie back on that Halloween in 1993. Now, almost 20 years later, Gilbert, who has studied magic all his life, bought the property that the sisters' old cottage was on and made a magic shop, is finally ready to summon the sisters. But there's just one problem. Only a virgin can light the black flame candle and bring the sisters back to life. And Gilbert's, of course, not a virgin. Now, I want to push back against this a little bit. While I say that the focus on Max being a virgin in the first movie is kind of weird, I think that it actually fits Gilbert's character a lot, and it can kind of make him a little bit more interesting if you make him a virgin. He is well into his adulthood. He's kind of nerdy, kind of strange, and while Salem does have that sort of reputation of being spooky, Gilbert is extremely kooky all on his own, even amongst a town like Salem, which is, small town America, traditional values, and he's this sort of flamboyant black man that seems to be a little bit ostracized by his peers. And I think making him a virgin and making him the one that lights the candle could be very interesting, and he could be the audience stand-in for the millennials that are rewatching this as adults. Now, if you're familiar with the plot of Hocus Pocus 2, at the beginning we get a flashback to the Sanderson sisters' childhood, and they're kind of shown to be a bit more sympathetic in this movie. They were running away from an arranged marriage, and they just wanted to be together, and they were ostracized by the community long before they became witches, just for being kind of weird. So we kind of start off the movie with some clear drama between Becca, Izzy, and their friend Cassie, who has started dating like this popular boy and isn't hanging out with them so much, which is like regular affair for teenage girls. Like, I had a friend back then who started dating around that age and ended up hanging out with me a lot less. It happens. It's just something that we have to accept. Yeah, real friendship will kind of stand the test of time. It's kind of clear where the direction of these characters is going, knowing that. But Gilbert, the local witch shop owner, who is friends with Becca and Izzy, convinces them to light the black flame candle, and it reawakens the Sanderson sisters, who are absolutely done with trying to absorb the souls of children and want to cast the spell Magica Maxima, which will make them all powerful. Now, we get some back and forth, and like I said, it feels like the girls spend the majority of their time locked in a basement or doing something that doesn't matter, or just watching the Sanderson sisters be absolutely freaking crazy. But at the end of the movie, it's revealed after Billy Butcherson, the zombie, and Gilbert are basically blackmailed into getting the ingredients for the spell ready by the Sanderson sisters. Once they actually cast that spell, it turns out that the cost is something that you care about the most. So as Winifred is the one that casts the spell, she loses her sisters. She begs Becca to do something because it's recently been revealed that Becca is a natural born witch, even though, it seems like that's something that has to be taught, but whatever, I guess. Who cares at this point? She begs her to help her bring her sisters back, or to at least reunite with her sisters. But the spell can't be undone, so instead, Winifred is sent into the afterlife to be with her sisters. And that's the movie. Now, I would like to go over a proposed alteration, and that, again, is to make Gilbert the main character. And I kind of would like to go through a plot synopsis of this new altered movie with this casting change made. So Becca, Cassie, and Izzy no longer in this movie. We don't need them. And we're instead going to focus on Gilbert. Just like before, our movie opens on a scene from the Sanderson sisters' past. It appears the sisters are more sympathetic than we were led to believe in the original movie. Became witches after being chased from the town and turned into social outcasts. They ultimately get their revenge on the town that betrayed them, As they say, a child that is not embraced by the village will burn it down to feel its warmth. In the present day, we are introduced to Gilbert, an odd man in his 40s that has never quite fit in with the rest of Salem. People talk about him behind his back or give him a hard time as he goes about his day in the town. The only exception being the mayor of the town, Geoffrey Trask, an old friend and a single father who is the only one to be more excited about Halloween than Gilbert is. Tonight, on Halloween night, Gilbert has a plan. Tonight, he's going to bring back his heroes, the family he's always wanted. We see a moment from Gilbert's childhood, that fateful night of Halloween in 1993, when he saw 3 witches riding broomsticks, silhouetted against the moon. He rushed to follow them, getting there only in time to see their plans foiled by Max, Allison, and Danny. That night, he vowed to do anything he could to bring them back. After the shop locks up for the night and the townspeople make their way into town for the Halloween celebrations, Gilbert goes into a secret room in the shop, which has left part of the Sanderson sisters' home intact. He lights the candle and summons the sisters, but this is not the brilliant reunion that Gilbert was hoping for. The sisters, realizing that Gilbert must be a virgin for the spell to have worked, tease him and then force him to gather ingredients for their Magica Maxima spell. Feeling a sense of obligation and hope that he will be spared by the sisters if he supports them, he enlists the help of still awakened Billy Butcherson. As Gilbert has to take more and more risks to gather the increasingly grisly spell ingredients, tension is pulled between Trask, who is a descendant of the Reverend who originally banished the girls from Salem, and the sisters, who assure Gilbert that Salem will never accept him, and if he wants to be a witch, that he can only achieve acceptance and belonging through a coven. When the final ingredient of the spell is revealed, which is blood of the enemy, aka Trask, he is disturbed by what Gilbert may be trying to accomplish. He ultimately gives Gilbert what he wants, willingly out of friendship and empathy, understanding this is important to him, and being a believer of the magic of Salem himself. Being surprised and touched by Trask's trust, Gilbert returns to the sisters, unsure of his allegiances, which only gets worse when he discovers the warning that accompanies Magica Maxima. In his hesitation, Winifred grows angry with him and lashes out, injuring Gilbert and rushing to complete the spell. Trask reappears and helps to defend Gilbert, even if his previous actions were questionable. When it's completed and Winifred feels the power coursing within her, she is horrified to see her sisters disappear before her eyes. She begs Gilbert to help her reunite with them and break the Magica Maxima spell, but it cannot be done. Using his knowledge of the book, after studying it for the past decade, he sends Winifred into the afterlife to reunite with her sisters. Billy Butcherson is finally allowed to move on as well, and Gilbert realizes that maybe he has friends in this town after all. Now, a lot of my changes leave the story intact for the most part, and I guess you could question whether or not it's acceptable to replace female leads in their teenage years with adult men, and in most cases, I would definitely say that I would probably be in the same boat. That being said, the girls in the original script, I feel like they didn't really do anything, and considering the main draw of the movie is the Sanderson sisters, I think it's fine if the male lead is there and a focus of the story as well. Moreover, I think that in the original script and in my rewrite, it's pretty clear that Gilbert, there's something going on with him. I definitely didn't read him as straight, and in my rewrite, he very explicitly isn't, with there being very intentional tension between him and Trask, who is a single father, widowed for who knows how long, and I think could make a potential love interest for Gilbert. But, maybe that's just with my little gay goggles on. I think you can like Hocus Pocus 2 just fine. You don't have to accept my rewrite of it. But I think, again, we need to question why we feel this need to put young teenage characters into the casts of movies that they didn't necessarily have them, or at least they didn't highlight them before. And while Hocus Pocus, the original movie, definitely had teenage main characters, again, nobody really cares about them. So it seemed odd to me to try and they're the teenage characters and they're innocent, but they're also witches, when it feels like to me that they want people to like the witch characters that are good and offer sort of but what if there was a good version of these characters? And that's why we see the Sanderson sisters contrasted at the beginning as teenagers, and Becky, Izzy, and Cassie, who are very similar to the Sanderson sisters, but end up choosing friendship and love and, don't go into the child-eating aspects of witchcraft that the Sandersons do. If you liked my rewrite of Hocus Pocus 2, make sure to give this video a like, and if you're not subscribed, please hit that subscription button. I would love to get to 5,000 subscribers by the end of the year. I stream a couple times a week, and I have one more Halloween video coming up. At least you might see some other stuff in November, kind of catching up on some of the stuff I missed for the Halloween season. And then I have some stuff, of course, planned for the holidays. So if that interests you, or you're interested in watching my live streams, I hope to see you back here again. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye!